So welcome to our presentation. Thank you for sticking with us this afternoon. My name is Paige.
My name is Sarah.
And my name is Olivia.
And we are presenting a solution today that incorporates preventing deforestation and incorporating smallholder farmers into a sustainable supply chain. We are presenting today on behalf of Micro Indonesia, which is a foundation based in Indonesia that promotes and implements microfinancing and financial literacy programs in the local community. And we are presenting to our client Cargill, which is a large palm oil producer based in Indonesia.
So yeah, using deforestation to plant new palm oil plants is a major problem in Kalimantan, Indonesia. And as this palm oil production is increasing, this deforestation will as well. Currently farmers are using methods such as slash and burn techniques to expand their land. So not only is this causing deforestation, but also increase in forest fires, increase in rates of CO2 emissions, and decrease in biodiversity. And in this, a lot of focus has been on the role of big plantations with deforestation. But we really want to focus on the impact of smallholder farmers in deforestation, as their deforestation practices have actually increased 69% over the past decade, and it's projected to grow further.
Okay, smallholder farmers have a short-term incentive to deforest rather than replant because replanting requires a 2 to 3 year period of zero yield while trees regrow, in which farmers are unable to cover their short-term costs of living. However, as you can see in this chart, replanting with better seeds will actually lead to higher yields and therefore higher income for farmers in the long run. They're just unable to bear the short-term costs.
So when finding a solution for this, it's really important to consider the wants and needs of both Cargill and also the palm oil farmers. So to start with Cargill, first, Cargill in their report identified that they want to include smallholder farmers in sustainable supply chains. So that's important to focus on. Secondly, Cargill has a reputation of being a company that cares about social responsibility and sustainability. And with 85% of grievances that Cargill receives concerning sustainability being actually centered from Indonesia, it's really important that we make the steps to improve the image of the company. Thirdly, if Cargill wants to increase sustainability in the supply chain, they need to have dependable relations with suppliers. And as this has happened before with Cargill and Guatemala, it's really important that we don't encounter a situation where we need to cut ties with the supplier because they're unsustainable, which could lead to a really costly restructuring of the supply chain. And then since 20% of the supply is from small farmers, Cargill needs to make these relationships with small farmers for the supply chain to work. And then fourthly, other competitors like Wilmar are already taking steps to building these relationships with farmers. So if Cargill wants to stay in the game and have top choices from these suppliers, they need to make steps to do this. And in terms of for the farmers, the major problems that they encounter are the financial instability during replanting season because they're not getting any revenue, and also lack of resources to implement the sustainable practices that these companies require them to do so. So therefore, we need to create a solution that provides this financial stability, provides this direct path to have a relationship between the supplier and buyer to ensure these resources, and then also improving farm productivity, which would in turn increase profit.
So to bridge this gap in the industry, we propose a financing scheme comprised of 3 facets. A key to this is that farmers would enter into this program with the understanding that they will sell to Cargill at Cargill's selected price for 9 months of the year. So the first, that would incorporate them into Cargill's sustainable supply chain. The first facet of this program would be the provision of a new seed technology that was developed by a company that has a presence in Indonesia. These seeds increase the speed of maturation of oil palm plants to 24 months from the industry average of 30 months, which is a 20% decrease in the time needed for these plants to mature. They also increase the yield of palm oil plants by 20%, therefore increasing farmers' profits and output. They increase this by about 7.5 to 8 ton in palm oil per hectare per year. The second facet of our program is a microfinancing plan, which would be financed by Cargill and implemented by us, Micro Indonesia. Because we're a local firm, we have the ability to partner and work with local farmers and communities that we already have relationships with. And we have the ability to identify female farmers in communities that we would be able to partner with and recruit other members into a microfinancing scheme. Cargill would offer no interest loans at the start of replanting for about a 2-year period, in which it would be a grace period where there was no interest, where farmers could use these financing to sustain their living while they're not producing any new crops, so they're waiting for their crops to mature. These loans, as I mentioned, they would have a grace period of 2 years, followed by a long maturity period for which them to repay. The microfinancing groups would share the risk of the loans, and if the one farmer was to default, they would split the cost. The members also, if any of them were to fail meeting the sustainability requirements that we set, or were to partake in deforestation or extensive planting, they risk losing Cargill's partnership. Therefore, the members keep each other accountable as well. We would also, as a backup, Cargill already has a technology that uses satellite imagery to measure the deforestation risk of their suppliers. So we would expand on your existing technology to monitor the success of this program. Finally, the third facet is a financial literacy program, which we have a history of implementing successfully with international partners within Indonesia. We would train the leaders of the microfinance plans, who would then go back to their groups and provide them with savings tools, specifically budget planning, to ensure that their loans last them the full replanting period.
So implementation and investment. We'll spend time and money in the local community helping farmers establish small microcredit groups and identifying farmers who need to replant within the year implementation of our program. We'll spend $482 on seeds and $1,250 on no interest loans per hectare. We'll spend $50,000 training a leader from each microcredit group to implement accessible financial literacy programs within their microcredit group, which will accumulate in a budget to keep farmers on track for loan repayments and also increase savings by farmers in general so that they can move away from the need for loans in the future if necessary. We'll spend $10,000 monitoring the progress of the project, mostly relying on Cargill's existing satellite software, and also including some follow-up meetings with the microcredit group leaders. And unfortunately, the overall total, I think, in this slide deck is, yes, it's incorrect. The total cost of the loans is $125,000 for 52 hectare farms, and the total cost of the program is $195,964, with the $125,000 of that being repaid in 10 years because of the loan. And then this is definitely feasible for Cargill because they've been increasing spending on projects like these since 2014. It aligns with their company goals. And in 2020, they spent $61.3 million in charitable contributions. And it is important to remember the cost of this program, about $200,000, is a little bit lower because we're doing 50 farms in sort of a pilot program. So it could be scaled up in the future.
So before we go over the long-term benefits of this program, there are some risks that we want to make sure you're aware of, that we would want to perform further research on. There has been some research recently on microfinancing schemes and the accumulation of debt in these schemes that make it unsustainable for lenders. We don't believe this is a problem with this program because we have such a large presence in the area and because these loans are so focused on short-term financing. And additionally, the borrowers will have an extended relationship with Cargill in which their income is also dependent on Cargill, and we have such a high presence. So we don't believe that the long-term accumulation of debt and the inability of farmers to repay the loans will be an issue. Secondly, we would want to consider some other environmental concerns that we don't address in this program, such as the potential issues with using one type of seed for planting and those implications potentially for monoculture, and the general environmental issues that accompany replanting. While replanting is a lot more beneficial than deforestation, there are some detrimental effects to biodiversity. So we would want to continually analyze and try to implement more sustainable practices in replanting.
So in terms of the benefits of this program, we can see this on the 1-year benefit, the 5-year benefit, and the 25-year benefit from this program. So within the 1 years of implementation, Cargill is going to be forming these partnerships with new farmers. Farmers are going to have an increase in initial income, and the local community will have a less risk of fire, and there's also going to be farmer leadership growth in the community. Then 5 years, which is about the time when the palm oil plants finish growing, Cargill will have even stronger, more reliable relationships with the farmer with increased supply and more oversight. Farmers are going to be profiting from interacting with Cargill a lot and also increased productivity. And the local economy is going to start to benefit economically. Now, 25 years, that is when they have to replant again. Cargill is going to have confidence in their sustainable supply chain, improve their public image. Farmers are going to have that financial stability we wanted, that lasting relationship with Cargill, and the local community is going to have continuous improvement of the economy and stable ownership of their ecosystem. So we really think that not only is this going to be incredibly beneficial for Cargill, but also for the small palm oil farmers and the local community themselves.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That is our time limit. Oh, perfect timing, actually. So we have a 5-minute Q&A now with the judges. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and Brenna will start the timer.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to start with a question because you mentioned finding female leaders in the community. Can you discuss how this will be able to help you? And could focusing on female leaders, will that create some inequality with men and potential protest and or violence?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We wanted to focus on female farmers initially, largely because previous research has shown that microfinancing schemes, women largely have a better handle on accounting and saving, and they also tend to benefit women and female farmers more so than men farmers because they tend to invest more in their households. As far as identifying female farmers, 40% of smallholder farmers in Indonesia are female. So it's definitely not equal, but it's not a huge disparity. And we didn't find any evidence of extreme gender violence or, conflict within agriculture communities, but that is definitely something we would want to consider more.
Yeah, I think we really wanted to focus on female farmers because increasing women's, I guess, power in the agriculture sector and developing their leadership skills would be good for gender inequality overall in Indonesia, which we thought was a really great added benefit to our program. Of course, if we did find that there was going to be a lot of gender violence in our initial research in the community, we would obviously want to maybe pivot away from focusing on female leaders. But I think when we do some initial research in the community, we find that that's possible, it would have some added gender inequality benefits.
Great. I really like that you focused on something that related to a financial literacy program. Could you go back to that slide for a second? I had 2 specific questions about that. The first question was, you allocated $50,000 to a financial literacy program. I'm curious, how did you develop that number? Why not 100,000? Why not 25,000? So could you put a little color and context around how you derived that number? And then the second related question was, Cargill, I mean, when you look at it as a company, what kind of expertise do they have in financial literacy?
I think we were considering that the foundation that we're representing actually has some expertise in training people in the community to implement these financial literacy programs. So that would be more on our end implementing than Cargill's necessarily. But the $50,000 we generated, so there's 50 smallholder farms. So we're allocating about $1,000 per farm. And just based on some literature and based on what we think would be a reasonable estimate, that's kind of how we came to that number. Yeah, I don't know, Paige or Olivia, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, we definitely want to do some more feasibility studies on the cost of financial literacy. Unfortunately, in the time constraints, we could not find exact estimates of this size of a project. But as far as Micro Indonesia, they've implemented successful programs for the World Bank, for IFC in financial literacy training, and they have extensive experience in it.
How many chapters are there of Micro Indonesia? Is it all around the country?
It's one foundation, but they've implemented projects around the country.
So how are you going to do the 50,000 farmers with Micro Indonesia? Can you explain that a little more in detail?
The 50s,
Go ahead.
Okay, we're doing 50 smallhold farms. So we were thinking that in our initial research, we would try to form small groups that we would give the microloans to. So of this group, we were thinking that ideally it would be somewhere between 5 and 10 people, and about a fifth of the group would be replanting at the time. So the loans are going to like some of the farms initially, and then the other farms are in the group just like saving money at the time. And then when the other farms need to replant in the future, since the replanting period is it's every 25 years. So ideally not all 50 farms are on the same schedule of when they need to replant. The microcredit group can kind of almost work to like guarantee that the loans will be repaid.
And I will note also that we are planning on implementing the pilot program in West Kalimantan in a specific area, because that's where Cargill already has a lot of existing relationships. So we wouldn't be as like geographically distributed initially in this pilot program.
That's great.
Thank you so
Dan,
much.
did you
It's
have
probably
a
gonna
question?
wrap up. Oh, so it's gonna wrap up our time for questions today, unfortunately. So thank you so much for a great presentation, though. I'm gonna